Hi, I'm Bill Lynn. I'm the Vice President of Heritage Arsenal, and here in our spaces today we've got a guest in the form of Nathan Marie, who is currently serving in the U.S. Army. But more importantly, he represents a new generation of collectors, which I'm passionately intrigued by, because really it's the individual collectors who ensure the survivability of some of these artifacts to the next generation. I mean, certainly we don't have exhibit space in every museum across the country for some of these relics and artifacts, and it's the individual collector who ensures their survivability. And so we brought a 29-year-old example of the modern collector in the form of Nathan Marie. And so I wanted to ask you, Nathan, how you got interested in collecting military memorabilia.
So I've had a lot of family serve in the military. I would say that I've had a family member serve in every major U.S. war that the United States has been involved in since Revolutionary War. And I was really proud of my father's service and my grandfather's service, and I knew I was going to serve. And so I took that service to the civilian side, and I started collecting when I was young. I started when I was 13 years old, and it started with buying helmets, going into antique stores, and just seeing what I could get my hands on, what was out there. And I researched my first uniform. It was actually a four-pocket dress tunic, just like this one, but it belonged to an officer that served in the Pacific. And I met his wife. She lived in Pennsylvania, and that's what got me started on getting more in depth on getting bigger collections, killed in action stuff, Air Corps things, infantry armor. So I have a wide variety of stuff in my collection.
So describe kind of, if you were going to put bookends around your collection, because of course you can't collect everything, right? Not only financially is that prohibitive, but just from a logistics standpoint of being able to exhibit, display, preserve. So how would you describe the confines of your collection, or the boundaries of your collection?
So when I first started my collection, I was getting my hands on small items like letters, buttons, individual pieces of uniforms, and then I shifted to an individual focus of infantry and armor. And then I had gotten a few pieces in that realm, and then I shifted to Air Corps. I still have the other things, but the bulk of my collection is Air Corps stuff. I have pilots, fighter pilots, bombers, crew members that were on bombers. So that's actually the focus of my collection now.
Take us through when you get something. Sometimes you're fortunate enough to get the information with it, right? It comes from maybe another collection or comes direct from the family, but there are often cases where there are holes in that story, in that narrative. So take us through some of the things that you do to document the narrative behind an object, and which is we collectively understand is all important, right? It's the object is the object, but it's the narrative that really tells the story and makes it a one of one. So take us through that.
Exactly. So first off, for anything in my collection, I don't buy anything unless I can research it. So that's the first rule. That's my own personal rule. I don't touch anything that I can't research. So what I do is I take a uniform in. Sometimes you get them, they're just laundry numbers. You don't have anything else. And you can go online, check the registers, and you have to search those laundry numbers, and you could have multiple names come up. And then you have to knock it down to when was the individual born, awards. Then that's when you can start knocking down to who it could potentially belong to. And then you have other cases. I've got some other really fantastic pieces in my collection that you get a whole file. I've had guys, they did a pretty good run of research already, had the planes they flew, the names, the guys they flew with, what bomb squadrons, fighter groups they were in and stuff. And then I was able to actually do a little bit more individualized research about maybe where they crashed, where they went down, where they were killed, where they're buried, things like that. So
really it's an exercise in triangulation. So you've got, from what I'm picking up from you, you've got unit histories that talk about the overall organization that individual member might have been a part of, but then you have an individual service record. You mentioned laundry numbers, and to a lot of people who would be watching this, they may or may not understand what that is. So, of course, when you're living with a group of individuals and uniforms are being sent out to be cleaned, right? Trying to get your uniform back can be difficult. So what they came up with a system of actually putting the first letter of your last name and the last four of your service number as a battle roster number or laundry number, as Nathan referred it to. There's actually a very interesting online website through the National Archives that you can search and actually put in a laundry number and potentially get a hit with respect to someone particular identification. And that is one of the things I talked about, shameless self-promotion, on a webinar that we did about researching your family member's military service, and that was one of the clues. So it's an interesting sort of detective story, right, to get this fully fleshed out narrative, mostly for people who are deceased or whose family members you don't have the benefit of directly interviewing yourself. And so you take what you do have, and then you take what's out there, and you try to triangulate the story and fill in the holes, right? And what was interesting was you did the very same thing for an Air Corps veteran who wasn't exactly obscure, Kermit Beahan, who was the bombardier who flew both Hiroshima and Nagasaki missions, which were the bombing missions that ended the Second World War and brought about the surrender of Japan in 1945, was not unknown within the Army Air Corps. However, you received some information, and then you were able to use your skills and experience to actually fully flesh that out into more of a complete narrative. And I will mention here that this is a second video of 2, and we were able to sit down and talk a bit about Kermit Beahan, his history, his unique service prior to these 2 controversial and still famous bombing missions over Japan in August of 1945. And what we were able to do in this video is actually bring in more objects related to the Beahan personal lot, all of them attributed to Kermit Beahan. And so I want to let Nathan talk us through some of these objects here. Of course, the 4-pocket, they remember from the last video, the dog tags, which likely were worn on the mission or the missions I just spoke about. But we've got some other objects here that weren't in the other videos. So could you talk us through what we're seeing here on camera?
So yeah, so what we've got up top, I'll start up here, is we've got an early war named Air Force style crusher cap that is actually named to Lieutenant Beahan up into the billfold. And this is a early war style with a early eagle, and it is a double seamed visor on the crusher cap. That's a really beautiful piece. That was actually one of Beahan's actual personal crusher caps that he actually wore.
These would have been private purchase, because this is it is gabardine. No, it's rabbit fur felt. It's actually rabbit fur felt. A really nice example of a visor cap from the period.
And yes, and so coming down to here, this picture right here is a beautiful photo that is not known to the world. It was actually came out of the collection from Mr. Beahan's wife. This photo was taken in 1956 of Kermit Beahan, and as you can see, it's a set of dress blues post-World War II with a different set of sewn navigator's wings, or bombardier's wings actually, my apologies. And that's a sewn ribbon rack with the correct clusters and things that he would have earned up until 1956. And then moving down here...
Still sporting his Clark Gable mustache as well, which is a kind of a signature for Kermit Beahan.
Yes, absolutely. So moving down here, this is a crew photo of the Bockscar members that actually flew the Nagasaki mission. Kermit Beahan is standing right here next to the gentleman in the gabardine tunic. I'm thinking this is Charles Sweeney, the pilot, right here. So if you'll notice, the B-29 Bockscar, there is no logo. The logo Bockscar was not applied until after the mission had been done.
You're speaking to the nose art that actually, if you see this plane, and you can, in fact, today see this plane in the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio at Wright-Patterson, they have the Bockscar in full, not a piece of it, but the actual full B-29 bomber. And to what Nathan is speaking about, there is a Bockscar logo / nose art that is on it that you don't see in the photo and was not flown with those markings during the actual mission.
Yes, so this photo was actually taken the day of the bombing, and it was post-bombing, so this is kind of their celebratory, the war was over photo. And so moving down here, we have a map. This is a double-sided, it's a silk or made out of a rubberized canvas, and it's actually it's a double-sided escape map, and it's got quite a few countries on it actually. You've got Germany on this side, and it shows all the former and current zones of German territories and the current Allied lines at the time. So a pilot would have used this if they were shot down or shot down and crash landed in enemy territory to try to navigate their way back to friendly territory. And this is a map that Beahan actually carried when he was a bombardier in the 12th and 8th Air Force.
Yeah, which were Europe, and we mentioned that before, that he is a two-theater guy. So he starts in Europe flying an extensive number of bomb missions and combat missions in Europe before he becomes an instructor and then is hand-selected by Paul Tibbets to join the Manhattan Project and then transfers to the Pacific to the 509th. These are great because you see sometimes pilots actually wearing these as silk scarves, which eliminated the friction and rubbing on their neck as they swiveled to look for enemy aircraft. You see paratroopers were also issued these as well. And the full kit would actually come with some escape items to include a very small compass. And so that's neat that you have Beahan's actual map from Europe.
And then what we've got here, this is an old schoolhouse item. People not my age would know anything about this necessarily, but so this is called a slide ruler, and it's basically a shortened ruler that you can extend to do measurements and calculations. And the interesting thing about this one is Kermit Beahan actually had wrote some of his calculations that he needed to use for quick thinking and quick use and application. So he actually rolled this thing over and wrote some of the formulas that he uses for his bombing missions. And then that's the original case for a slide
and you've
ruler.
got another instrument there from the Beahan lot.
Yes, that's correct. So this is called a D4 computer, and this was like somebody carrying a phone today. This is what a bombardier would have to have this to be able to correctly be able to formulate wind speed. They could use them for the bomb drops. They could use these to if the airspeed indicator got knocked out in the plane. This was something that they could use to formulate the speed by hand if they had to, and that's something that every bombardier and navigator carried in their pockets.
Yeah, I think some people get the misimpression that, because we had the Norden bomb sight or something, it was all plug and play, right? It was just a push of a button. But actually, you're using hard calculations, stubby pencil work, that are the checks and balances to ensure that if a piece of equipment went down, you have a means through a primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency to make sure that you're not lost out there someplace, that you can continue mission using some of these more rudimentary instruments to get it done. What are the other photographs you've got there, Beahan?
Yeah, so this is a really good photo right here. So this is a photo of Kermit Beahan that was taken in October of 45, right after the end of World War II. And as you can see, he's wearing a summer four-pocket dress tunic. And also you can see a similar configuration of ribbons with his bombardier wings. And he's wearing an Allied Headquarters Air Corps patch. And you can see some markings on here. You see a plane in the background, and you can see a propeller coming down right here. I think this is the Bockscar plane that he's standing behind. It is. There is evidence to indicate this is a B-29. You can't tell it's Bockscar, but we would like to think that he's doing a press. This is a press photographer's photo, which I have the original, and it's marked as. It has photography markings on the back of it, so this was a press photo for like a war bond driver.
Whereas this end one here, I think, is a still taken from a video or a film, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Where they're actually interviewing him in front of Bockscar, I believe.
So this was a video. They did this with all the crew members of the Enola Gay and Bockscar. So this is a video. Kermit Beahan's got a pretty good smile going here. He's talking about the actual bomb drop and he's talking about, sighting up the bomb picture and dropping the bomb, and that was his greatest thrill about the mission.
And two items, we say the best for last in this case, I guess, is you've got his wartime worn, we believe mission worn summer flight suit.
Yes, that is correct.
As well as his headset. I mean, unbelievable, but that was actually at the crossroads of history, as controversial as it might have been. Those were the actual items Beahan is using and applying his trade as one of the most capable bombardiers in the entire Army Air Corps at the time.
Yeah, so the flight suit back here is actually a K1 model. It's a mid to late war model, 43 to 44. And it's got a lot of zipper configurations on it, and it's also got a leather band mark so that you can keep your clipboard on your knee when you're running your missions. And Beahan configured this one. He put his bombardier wings on it, his captain rank and Air Force props, and then this is the actual headset he would have worn that would have put plugged into the Bockscar on the mission. So that's actually
this would have been supporting internal communications among the crew.
Yes, that's correct.
During up to, during, and post mission.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, just a fabulous group, and it's always important, and you can go ahead and emphasize this too, Nathan, is to have these things together in a lot like this. It tells a more impactful story when we can link all of these together, and these aren't disparate items out there or onesies and twosies, but to be able to talk about this as a cohesive group. This makes a historical impact, and certainly even someone who's not familiar with maybe the Army Air Corps or even Kermit Beahan specifically can come view a group like this and really appreciate the weight of history that's represented here by these assembled items. And we certainly appreciate Nathan Marique for coming in, sharing these objects with us, and giving us a little bit more insight about the role that collectors play in the preservation and promotion of our peerless military history, which museums cover down on a portion of, people like us, Heritage Arsenal, cover down on a portion of, but that individual collectors play a key role in.